Today we are talking about the new moon in Capricorn on January 2nd, and there is so much to talk about. Starting with, it's going to be January 2nd, 2022. That's a lot of twos. Let's talk about it. Hi everyone, I'm Donna Stellhorn, your practical astrologer, here to talk to you today about the new moon on January 2nd. This is at 12 degrees of Capricorn, and we are going to do a little overview, and then I'm going to go sign by sign. There are timestamps and chapters, so you can jump right to your sign, but I do recommend you listen to this opening because I have a lot of interesting things to tell you. And it actually starts with the number 2, and this is of course the year 2022. That's a lot of twos, and this first new moon is on January 2nd, so we add in another number 2. And so the number 2 of course is about relationships and how to connect with another person. And so this is, coming out of the pandemic and where we were very isolated, now is this energy of kind of pushing forward through whatever is going on as you're listening to this to see what kind of connections you can make. Now, these may not be in-person connections. These could be online. Now we're so fortunate to have so many different ways to connect with people. And I know sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming. But the number 2, which is a very positive number, does say that what you get out here then joins with who you are, and then we get something even more, which would then be the number 3 and so on. Now, the number 2 itself is very interesting in how you draw it. So first of all, let's look at the number itself, and if we divided it in half, then what we have above the top is kind of this little hook. And then at the bottom, maybe there is this flat bottom, or maybe you've made a little loop, and so you've got a little part of the loop touching and then the end touching. So first of all, let's talk about this division. So the upper half of how you write your number is about spirituality, intellect. It's about these higher thoughts that you're having. And then what's below that horizon, that middle line, is going to be what's going on with the physical or the emotional, the very practical side. So what's interesting about the number 2 is it has this kind of hook on it, and some people can add an extra hook, and that means you're trying to capture information from above, from your mental, your higher self. And then it comes down, and some people draw it with a flat bottom, which says, I'm very stable. That's extremely practical. I want to have, a solid relationship. I want to know where I stand. Or you may do the more artistic loop. And so then there is less of an emphasis on stability in the relationship in the physical sense. And so this might be a more emotional or intellectual or even spiritual relationship. And so look at how you draw the number 2 just in your normal writing, and that will tell you something about yourself. Now, as I continue this introduction about what is going on, which, by the way, there are planets retrograde, there are planets going into new signs. This is a crazy time to be in. I do want to tell you that, as you proceed through this, check out some of my writings and other videos. I have a couple of courses on Udemy. I have books up on Amazon, especially Chinese Astrology 2022, Year of the Water Tiger. We're going to be talking a lot about that in the coming weeks. And I already have a couple of videos on Year of the Tiger up on the channel, so I hope you'll check those out. So as we are going into 2022, you might hear a lot of dire predictions, and I kind of want to put those into context for you. So I remember back in 2019 when I was out doing lectures, and this was very early in 2019. I was out promoting a book I'd written, and the interesting thing was that I was talking about 2020 and these terrible aspects we were going to be doing, specifically Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto all coming together in Capricorn. And I was like, this is bad. This is like life transforming energy. And most people around me were like, hey, you're kind of a downer right now. And so of course, now, when you are listening to predictions, what you're going to find is people are going to say, oh my gosh, this is awful, look what's coming. And, yes, there are aspects coming for sure, but I want you to recognize how much you've already been through. You have survived so much already. It is shown that you are adaptable, that you can make something good happen out of a difficult situation. And so I want you to remind yourself that while you're listening to everybody's predictions about inflation and, war or things like that, that you can not only survive this, you can prosper. Now, there are some very interesting, and some people would say intense aspects that are going to be coming up. Not least of which is Pluto will be doing a return to its original spot in the United States chart, which could create a complete transformation of this country. That, of course, will unfold over several years, so this is not something that happens immediately. As you go out there and listen to predictions and think about what's going on, the thing to remember is that in every difficult time throughout history, there have always been people who have prospered. So while there can be things going on in your neighborhood or your city or your country that are huge, life-changing things, it's important that you look for the lessons and figure out proactive choices that you can make. And as you do, you will find that doors often open. So, and this is, yes, everybody is going through different levels of circumstances. You might be going through something that is so horrendous that you have to just slowly walk through that dark valley before you can see the light again. And in that, what I would suggest is reach out for help, reach out to somebody, or a group or an organization of people to help you through that. But if you are worried about all of the aspects that are coming up and the new year, etc., but you're sitting in a house and you have food in the cupboards and the lights are working, recognize that in this moment, you are okay, and this gives you the opportunity to make plans and make proactive choices. So it was Charles Dickens who said, it's the best of times and it's the worst of times. I think I paraphrased that, but what it means is that there's always a lot of stuff going on. If we look at what's going on right now, for many of us, we are poised at one of potentially the most prosperous times in history. There is more ways to make a living doing what you love to do than there ever has been. We can say that maybe this is going to come even more with Web3 and blockchain and NFTs, giving, artists and writers and teachers a way to make a living without the gatekeepers being there. When I wrote my first book 20 years ago, back then you needed a publisher. And actually, I think it was more than 20 years ago. So, but who's counting? You needed a publisher. That was the way that you did it. And perhaps you even needed an agent. And so there were so many fantastic writers at the time who just didn't have publishers. I was lucky enough to get a publisher and to have my books, my information out there in the world. But nowadays, there's no more gatekeepers. They're publishers, but you don't have to go through a publisher. You can write your book and upload it to Amazon today. Now, we're going to talk about the aspects that are going on right now, but I just wanted to say that If you want to look at your chart in more detail, I do readings. Just send me an email and I'll send you all the details. So Venus is retrograde until January 29th, and Venus retrograde means that we are re-looking at what we think is fun. That is, what brings you pleasure, what do you enjoy, what do you want, and even the opposite side of where do you feel lack. And so this is, this Venus retrograde period is a time where you can go back and look at what it is that you have liked in the past and see if you still like it. I mean, you might be a person who says, yes, that you love ice cream, but then you want to give up sugar. And so maybe when you taste the ice cream, you say, oh, that's not so good. And maybe you find that, that you can find a substitute that you enjoy more. Maybe that's a walk in nature, maybe it's something that is made that's sugar-free. So there's, this is a time where we look at what it is that we want and we say, do I still want it? But the other side, the flip side of that is where we say, I'm lacking. Where are you lacking something that you really want, that you crave, that you desire, and you're not getting it? And then how can you take the steps to make that happen? And that is that, we can wish for something, but until we start to visualize the steps, we're not going to get there. So Mercury goes retrograde in Aquarius on January 14th to February 3rd. And of course, Mercury retrograde means that we are rethinking something. And of course, in Aquarius, that is rethinking friendships, rethinking technology, your involvement in the community, and your future. So you might be updating your vision board. You could be joining an organization, leaving an organization, reviewing your friendships and saying, where you feel like it's working, where you feel like you want to expand your circle of friends, or maybe pull away from someone who is taking a different path. And then also, we relook at technology, but it's not a good idea to buy technology items if you can help it during Mercury retrograde. Myself and another astrologer, Tammy Magaro, put out not just, we put out a whole set of books, but there is a specific book on the retrograde periods that are happening in 2022, and I will put a link to that website and the information on that in the description. So Jupiter goes into Pisces on December 28th, and Jupiter is quite at home in Pisces. So generally, Jupiter spends about a year in each sign. Of course, it's going to go retrograde and then go forward again. And so sometimes, like this period, we're going to see it go back and forth a little bit. In fact, let's see, it remains in Pisces till May 10th, 2022. Then it will go into Aries for the summer, and then it goes back into Pisces on October 28th, 2022, and then it goes back into Aries on December 20th, 2022. So on and off, it's going to be in Pisces. And as I said, it's quite at home in Pisces. And so this will be a time where we're expanding our interest in psychic ability, desire to get a good night's sleep. We could see a lot of interest in spirituality increase, desire to do yoga and things like that. Also, if you are investing in ththings like oil or mining, you might see things, go up. And just a reminder too, and little disclaimer, I am not a financial planner, and so this is information for entertainment purposes only. If you have questions about this, you should speak to your financial planner before you're doing anything. Or financial advisor or licensed fiduciary. So then on December 30th, we have an interesting aspect, which is Mars is going to hit the solar eclipse degree. So that solar eclipse degree was 12 degrees of Sagittarius, and Mars is going to cross that point. So during an eclipse, which we had a couple of weeks ago, what happens is that kind of one door closes and another door opens, but sometimes the energy isn't activated yet. Well, this is that activation point. So it is quite possible that whatever you've been waiting for the eclipse will happen around this time. Now, the North Node's going to back up into Taurus on January 18th. So the North Node goes backwards through the chart as it hits one sign after another. So it's going then from Gemini back into Taurus. So Gemini was about communication and transportation and how we are expressing our thoughts, which it's so interesting. So the North Node is in a sign for about a year and a half. And so what happened over the last year and a half is like we redefined getting around town, much less commuting. Electric bikes have just exploded. I saw them everywhere. Communication, now almost everything I do now is on Zoom, and you might find the same thing. So communication has changed. And so then the North Node will go through Taurus, which of course represents money and values and our sense of worthiness. And so that's what we're going to be thinking about. As at the same time, we see, of course, supply chain issues. We also have inflation going on. There is this impending battle between fiat currency and Bitcoin that I think probably is still a few years off, but this could bring up the rhetoric about it. Everybody will start talking about it, and it will seem really intimate. It'll seem like it's going to happen really soon, or intimately. That's also a possibility. But recognize it's just the North Node that stirs up our desire to learn about it and look at it, but we may not make a change right then. That, I think, is mostly the Uranus going through Taurus, and Uranus is about halfway through Taurus and will be in the course of 2022. And so that is really what is causing the change in the way we see money. And so Uranus still has a couple of years to go in Taurus, and I think that transformation of how we interact with money will change in that time. And then, of course, February 1st, which is outside of the period of this video, but I just want to mention it, brings the Year of the Water Tiger. I've put up a couple of videos about this already, so you might want to check those out. Oh, and I forgot to mention, there are 2 planets at 0 degrees in this chart. So 0-degree planets are much more intense than regular planets. So the way the numbers go is we go from 0 to 29 degrees. So it's a total of 30 degrees, but the 2 critical degrees that I concentrate on the most are 0 and 29. There is traditionally a 3rd critical degree, and that would be 15, but I don't focus on that as much. That's usually for the outer planets, and that's usually when we say, okay, something's more official, something's really now happening because it's established. So in a sense, we are going to go through that with the Uranus because it's going to cross that point, that halfway point. And so that is a time where, maybe inflation is official. It's no more speculation. And maybe Bitcoin is more legitimate at that point, things like that. But 2 planets at 0 means that it's brand new energy. And the 2 planets are Mercury and Jupiter. So new energy in communication and new energy in what we're learning and how we're expanding. So the nature of the 0 degree is optimism, that you feel like it's brand new, and so it's going to work, like it's going to happen. The challenge can be that everything looks exciting and new. And so there's a little bit of shiny object syndrome that can happen with a 0 degree, especially if you have it natally. You might jump from thing to thing, never really wanting to settle down because always the grass looks greener over the next pasture. So now we're going to go sign by sign, and for this, remember to listen both to your sun sign and to your rising sign, and that will give you a more complete picture. If you don't know your rising sign, send me an email with your birth information, and I'll send you a PDF of your chart. Okay, Aries, you guys are extremely noticeable at this time. This new moon is at the top of your chart, and so you have an opportunity to be seen. Now, that can mean increasing your followings on social media, finding someone for a relationship, finding someone for a partnership, getting a new job. This is the highlight of your year. This is where you're going to feel one of the strongest periods for being seen. So now the best way to utilize that, of course, is to put things out into the world in a very positive way. If you're going towards controversy or negativity, you're also going to be seen, but it may get out of hand. Now, when we look at the Jupiter and where you are protected, where you have more luck, where you want to expand, is actually in your area of spirituality, and that does mean that you have kind of an angelic presence around you that is pulling you out of difficulties. That doesn't mean you don't have difficulties, but what happens could either have been much worse, or like if there is something where you need a professional to come in and help you, you find the professional, everything tends to work out in the long run. But initially, this shows that you have more protection probably because you need it. And that means that you don't want to just jump in. Aries can be quite impulsive. You don't want to just jump in and try to get things done rather than holding back just a little bit, considering the situation, and then taking some sort of measured steps. So when it comes to your relationships, Venus is not making an aspect with Mars. So this means that while you can meet someone because you are so noticeable, the timing is still a little off. And that means that it's hard to get together maybe for a date, or to get together for more than one date over a 2-week period. So that is, you have to be a little bit patient when you're meeting someone, because they might be very busy with work. They come back to work and there's a huge pile of emails, or they're getting settled back into their dorm. And so this is saying that, the potential's there, it just hasn't quite lined up yet. Now, when it comes to your home life, you're pulling energy from the moon that is elevated in the top of your chart. And so we have a little bit of irritation going on. And this means that either you as a family are irritated with something outside of you. And that might be there's a construction, or people aren't removing the snow, or just weather is difficult in general. So maybe there's some extra noise from neighbors, that sort of thing. I'm seeing it as more external things happening rather than things that are internal. That, there seems to be less fighting amongst yourselves and more that there's something outside that is just this small irritation. And I do want to emphasize it's fairly small. Now, a small irritation, kind of like that drop of water on the forehead over and over, which would drive a person mad over a long period of time, that is, if you allow yourself to be overwhelmed by the small irritation that your neighbor always puts their trash cans in the wrong place, something like that can drive you a little batty. But if you remind yourself, one, this is a temporary aspect, and two, that if something external like this is irritating, the universe is trying to get your attention to make some sort of shifts yourself. And so that it might not be that your trash cans are in the wrong place, but that there is something that you do need to take care of. And as you do, then your neighbor miraculously puts their trash cans in the right place, and you don't know why that happened, but it's all connected in the eyes of the universe. When it comes to your money, we talked about this in many videos. I just wanted to remind you that Uranus is going through your house of money, which means change your ideas and attitudes about money. Now, of course, this is a very long aspect. You still have, I believe, till 2025 to get all of this right. But it is to look at the changes that are going on in a worldview, in a societal view, but also your personal views of how you handle money, especially if you identify with some negative money habits. Like if you say, I'm the kind of person who cannot handle money, that is, you're identifying with something that's negative. And so as Uranus is traveling through this house, you have these years to get your head on straight about money. And once you get it on, we already got the head straight thing. Once you do recognize that you're okay with your personal money, then start to look at the bigger picture and how maybe monetary policy in your country is changing, how society is changing in general about money. I did a video on some of the Saturn-Uranus square possibilities with Bitcoin. You might want to check that out. I'll put a link in the description. And I do plan some additional videos on some of these topics, especially as they relate to 2022. A lot of those will be under the Chinese astrology videos, so check those out as well. Now, to continue with your money, you are pulling money from that Venus, which is elevated in your chart. It's in your house of career. This bodes very well for bringing in income through your chosen profession, or if you're finding a new profession, actually making some money through your new profession as a signal that you're going the right direction. So love that energy. Venus is still retrograde, and that means that you may be going back to something you've done before, that some source of money that you've had in the past is coming back to you. So that can be some possibilities. It's separating from Pluto, so you may not be quite as obsessed as you were before. However, of course, at some point, Venus will go forward and cross that point again. So if you are still feeling, like someone has taken something from you, or you're feeling extreme lack, then you want to address this from a spiritual standpoint, especially while Jupiter is going through your house of spirituality. Now, when it comes to money from investments, especially traditional investments, and these are the things, I've been talking a long time about traditional investments versus risky investments, but I think that how things are shifting in the world, I'm probably going to start to differentiate as a traditional investment as something you hold long term. Even if you are day trading a traditional investment, that is a risky prospect. And so that's going to fall in that section of risky investments. So, but if you are doing a quote unquote risky investment, but your plans are to buy and hold, that then is going to be more of a traditional investment. I may have to do a video just on this topic. So if this is confusing, let me know and I can spell this out. So going back to you, the important person here. So when we look at the traditional way of holding investments or business income or income from a family business, Venus is still making this aspect to Pluto, even though it's separating. So you do still have time to accumulate some money in this area. Then there may be a time for a while where you're doing back office stuff or you're pitching, but you're not receiving. But over this 2-week period, I do expect you to make more money than usual. When it comes to money derived from career, Venus is not making an aspect to Uranus, nor is it making an aspect to Saturn. And so there is this opportunity to gain a new job for sure, but it's probable that by the time you do all the negotiations and there's that delay in getting the paycheck, that the money is coming in outside of this 2-week period. It also does not show that it's beneficial to try and ask for a raise at this time, because you're probably going to get a no, or at least the runaround until you get out of this 2-week period. So Mercury's at 0 degrees in that house of money derived from career, and that can mean that people just say, well, I don't know, and we have to see what things happen, and I know you'll get something in the future, but everything's super vague. And so at this time, it doesn't show that you're making more than usual. You're just making about the same as usual. And then when it comes to risky investments, which we are now defining as being a very short-term trader or trying to time the market, or of course, the more classical versions of risky investments, which would be like a franchise or doing something like trying to make a living from your art and things like that. Boy, even that will change with NFTs, but we'll talk about that in a future video. So Venus is not making an aspect with the sun, and so therefore you're making about the same as usual. Now, again, because the Venus is so elevated, you have a chance now of getting some of the information and help you need to move this forward, whatever project it is. But the actual benefits, or monetary benefits, I should say, are not within this 2-week period. Okay, Taurus, where we see you, needing to focus on, what are your responsibilities, and also where you could get some recognition is in the area of knowledge, teaching, writing, publishing, and connections with people who live far away. So this is it's a point where your reach is bigger. You are able to reach more people, and that could be to gather followers or fans, or to expand your world that way. Now, it's also possible that over this period of time you're doing some travel and therefore meeting people in foreign lands, or someone is traveling to you. Now, of course, if you're in school, then the focus is specifically on how you get back into the groove of things. And I think that because of this very strong Capricorn energy, because it's 4 planets in Capricorn with Venus retrograde in Capricorn, there is a need for you to lean into this, to take on the burden, knowing that the only way to get to the mountaintop is to climb the mountain. And so the energy here is, maybe go out online and find videos on productivity and how to study. There's Cal Newport's books, there's Thomas Frank's videos. Both of those resources can really help you get great grades. When it comes to your luck and where you have an opportunity to expand, is that Jupiter in your house of friendships and community organizations. And so this is about getting back into groups and reconnecting maybe with, meetup groups or leads groups or professional organizations. And even if you're not seeing people in person yet, to actually get on those Zoom calls and participate. I know that there was a bit of Zoom burnout, but now I think Zoom is kind of getting integrated into our lives. I know that, my practice, went from maybe seeing about 30% of clients in person, and then some by Zoom and some by phone, to now like 95% by Zoom. And I think it's going to stay that way. I think that, we have to, if you're feeling like some Zoom burnout, it's time to move past that, because this is going to be an integral part of how you connect with people all over the world, which is what this new moon is about for you. When it comes to relationships, Venus is still making an aspect with Pluto, although because Venus is retrograde, Venus is pulling away. So what this means is that there is a limited amount of time, if you've met somebody new, to try to get together. Otherwise, you guys get busy, or this person might be traveling or going back to school. And so there is this window where you can meet in person or connect in some way. Now, this also does mean with Venus retrograde that it's quite possible that someone from your past will return. And so that can also pull you away from a new relationship, because this past person is tempting you to, get back into a relationship. And so we have both of these forces playing at you, which says that new relationships are quite possible, but someone from your past may return. When it comes to family life, it looks like you guys are dispersing in some ways, like you came together for the holidays and now you're going in all different which ways and different directions. It's possible that maybe your kids came home from college and now they're going back to college, or that that just the kids were home from school and now everybody is going all these different directions. So it looks a little bit like you're scattered, like it's difficult to come together for a family meal or even a discussion. So, but that will all settle down. It just settles down outside this 2-week period. When it comes to your money, the North Node's been traveling through your house of money for about 1.5 years, and it's just about to leave. And I think we talked about that in the opening, that it's, very soon going to go into Taurus, which is your sign. And but that means that it leaves your house of money, which is fantastic, because as the North Node is traveling through a house, you are learning about it, but you don't have the ability maybe so much to practice or to accumulate or to really capitalize on the energy. So pretty soon in this month of January, at some point, money will get a little bit easier and then continue to get easier to get. In the meantime, you only have a few weeks left to learn all the lessons you need to learn about money, because it's going to take another 18 years for this to come back. So you really want to look and see, if you need a class on financial planning or budgeting, do you need to learn about the changes that are going on in currencies these days, or monetary policy, or how inflation's going to affect you, or how to get rid of debt, things like that. You only have a couple of weeks to work on this, and then this aspect is gone for a very long time. So that's kind of the fire that I want to put under you right now. Now, when it comes to money in general for you, you're pulling money from that Mercury, which is at 0 degrees, which means there's a new source of money that's coming in. Now, this is probably related to some career thing because it's elevated in your chart. Could also be your side business, where maybe you're doing YouTube videos or a podcast, maybe showing your art, where you're putting yourself out there to be seen. Now, it's quite important that you take charge of this, that you not just sit and wait, because the Mercury is in a very active position telling you to go do something about this. But with the 0 degrees, you might say, I don't know what to do. And that's where asking yourself really good questions helps, where you say, if I knew what to do, what would I do? Or if I was Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, what would they do? So you get what I mean. So I think this is really good energy for you, but the 0 can be a little tricky because initially it feels like everything's going to work, and then there's some frustration when it doesn't. And that's just because you haven't asked the right questions. Now, when it comes to traditional investments, and I'm going to have to say this every single time, in 2022, now, my definition of traditional investments is going to be shifting, and it's going to shift throughout the year. I'll talk about this multiple times, but I'm seeing that some things that people call traditional investments, they are doing in a very risky fashion, and that would be like, you might be looking at a stock like Amazon, but then doing day trading or even options trading with this in some sort of leveraged or derivative fashion. That's highly risky. So that can't be classified under traditional investments anymore. On the other hand, you might be in something that the masses think is risky, like Bitcoin, but you've decided to be a Bitcoin maximalist, and you're only going to hold Bitcoin, and you're going to hold it for the next 20, 30, 40 years. That's much more of a traditional way of doing things. So I need to shift this, and I want to shift the explanation of it, because with astrology is living and breathing. It's always growing, and as we get more information, we make changes. And so what the ancients saw as a traditional investment is so different than it is today. So that's why I'm shifting these definitions. I'll continue to talk about this throughout the year, but I want to go back to what I was saying before. With traditional methods of investing, so that's what we're talking about, traditional methods of investing or business income or from a family business. Now I have to check the aspect, hold on. So Mercury is making a semi-sextile to Jupiter, and both are at 0 degrees. So new opportunities, a definite opportunity to accumulate money, to have some real success, but it is at 0. So initially it's going to feel like you're having to toss everything at it, like, what do they say, throwing the kitchen sink at it to see what works. That's the best method, rather than fixating or focusing on one thing. So really good energy, but it is at 0, which says some brand new source of income, some brand new way you're thinking about money. And clearly I'm getting affected by it too, because I'm looking at your chart differently than I was in 2021. Now, of course, Taurus rising, you guys get a very similar energy with the money from investing or business, as well as money derived from career, because you guys are the money sign. So you, as Taurus, you are learning and growing and have a natural talent with money. And so this is why these things come up very similar for you. Now, not only do you have that semi-sextile energy, which I should have pointed out before, is still slightly irritating. It's a little bit more work than you want to do. It's a little outside your comfort zone, which, like with so many new ways to make money, that's not too surprising. And Taurus in general, you prefer to do things for a long period of time, to understand the process of things, to bring things to a completion. Starting new things is not necessarily your favorite thing to do unless your chart holds a lot of Aries in it. If you are very strongly Taurus, you're going to be more about finishing things. If you're just Taurus sun, but you have a lot of planets in Aries, then starting things, that's no problem. So I digress. Let me go back to you, which is that Jupiter at 0 degrees is in your house of money derived from career. And so I'm taking this as a positive. Now, the positive part, or the caveat, is actually what I'm trying to say, is that it's a semi-sextile and they're at 0. So you can get more money from your boss, but they're going to offer you some new position or some new project, or there's something you have to do, and it's either outside your comfort zone, just a smidge, not hugely, but just a smidge, or it is something that, I had something else, but now I don't remember what that is. Never mind. It's outside your comfort zone, and it's a new project, and they're going to couple that with the raise. And so, you might want to wait till things line up a little smoother. And then finally, when it comes to risky investments, which we are now considering as a risky way of handling investments, although there are still some inherently risky investments, and that would be, like where you take, you mortgage your house to buy a business, or you are gambling that your art is going to help you make a living, things like that do take, much more focus, real commitment, and some luck. That was a long explanation for that, but it's ruled by that Mercury at the top of your chart, but at 0. So it says you're really, really optimistic. And so with this much optimism, with no investigation of the downside, that can be a problem. So when a planet's at 0 degrees, there's always that kind of worry that because you have so many different directions you go, you haven't really settled on the direction. And I was just listening to a podcast, and this guy had written an article way back, and it was called The Highest Hill or something like that, where if you needed to climb to the highest hill, but it's foggy, and so you have to figure out a way to choose the hill, the idea is that you have to set up some sort of criteria to determine whether the hill you're choosing is the highest hill. I'll try and find you the link for this. But what this means with the 0 is that you could pick something randomly and then just completely commit without looking at something else. And it is more important right now to do some testing of the waters when it comes to risky investments. Okay, Gemini, where you guys are doing this new moon and where you need to get serious and take responsibility is in the area of finances, investments, debt, and credit, and as well as intimacy. I know we don't talk about romance so much on this channel, and so there may be something there where you're needing to take some responsibility for something because of an intimate relationship. But let's focus on my favorite topic, which is money. And that means that what's lit up for you is if it's time for you to get out of debt, if it's time for you to really get serious about your investing, that you learn why you're investing in something, where you're not just turning everything over to somebody else. That you're not just saying, I'm not good at this, so I'm not even going to bother doing that. This is a time to look at, there's so many great tutorials out there on YouTube, so many great podcasts on this. You can learn this. And so if you run into something and it sounds too complicated, just stop the program, start looking up some words, do individual videos on different terms so that you can learn this. Because, this is something where, nobody's going to care about it as much as you do. And so right now you have some great opportunities in this area of finding good investments, maximizing your 401k, or doing some things that are going to help your future. And you have that energy now. So where Jupiter is bringing you some luck and expansion is in the area of career. It's right at the top of your chart. And so you have this opportunity to get a new job or to get a transfer within your company for a better position or to move up in the company. So this is looking really good. Now it's at 0, so it means that all possibilities are on the table. And when you're faced with so many possibilities, it's not great to just choose one and say, this is it forever, I'm not going to do anything else. But it would be more like doing a smorgasbord or, like a buffet of, let's taste this, let's taste that. So, and that all comes down to, exercises on, where your talents are, what vocation would be good for you. Of course, looking at your chart, have an astrologer, like myself. So, and there's links in the description, but have an astrologer look at your chart to see where your talents and abilities lie so that that can be lined up with a profession. Or, take one of those vocational tests so to see where your abilities are, to maybe go back and think what you wanted to do when you were young, because that often will tell you what kind of direction you should be going in. So looking at these things now, Jupiter's there, and as we talked about in the opening, is going to be there on and off for a year. And so you have an opportunity to make some course corrections or adjustments when it comes to your career. Now, when it comes to relationships, the energy for meeting a new love partner is huge right now for you. I mean, that house of intimacy is chock full, plus Mercury's making a semi-sextile with Jupiter. Now, yeah, I know you're going to say semi-sextile, that's not so great, but it is an aspect and both the planets are at 0. So what it is kind of like meeting somebody who you think you kind of like, but they're a little bit irritating or they're a little bit outside your comfort zone. Something's different, but that irritation is kind of what glues the two of you together. So this is a time where you want to not look for the perfect person, but look a little outside of your norm of what it is, the type of person that you normally date. Now, of course, if you're getting giant red flags, don't date that person. If they're saying terrible things to you or something that's scaring you, that's not slight irritation. So, but if you're very punctual and they are more laid back, see if that can't be something that is discussed. Or, if you're a major coffee drinker, but they only drink tea, look at some of the more minor things as things that might actually bring you together rather than separate you. So when it comes to home and family, you have some really interesting energy because it's ruled by that Mercury at 0 degrees. It is showing that you have bigger ideas. So the family is thinking in these bigger terms. And maybe that is just that the kids are going back to school, and so you're at the airport and you're sending them off, and so now you're kind of like the families in two places. But it also could be that you're really thinking about moving to the country or moving out of the country. Maybe you are thinking about how to bring the world to you in some sort of import-export business or something. So there's some brand new thing. Oh, you know what? I didn't even think, but maybe it's a pregnancy, because that would definitely expand the family. Also, of course, when we talk about adding to the family, pets would be included. So getting a dog or cat. And by the way, at the very end of these videos, you can click right to the end. There's always a little clip of LaRue. If you are a cat lover, I do recommend that. When it comes to your money, you are pulling money directly from that moon in your house of investments, credit, and debt. And so if you wanted to get a bill consolidation loan, refinance your house, or things like that, that is all quite possible now. This also means that the more you work on your finances, the more money you make in general. And so you might find that you're spending a lot in fees for your investments, or that your money's sitting in a checking account where it could be making interest somewhere. Things like that can really help. Like maybe you have duplicate subscriptions so you can eliminate some expenses. So the money, your ability to pull in money is very strong, but it's very focused on you paying attention to your money. When it comes to traditional investments, all right, I know I said that slow. Okay, so I'm going to have to say this 12 times, and so I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this. When it comes to investments, and which is this next house that we always talk about, my feelings about when I say traditional investments versus risky investments, this definition, I think, is changing. And that is this house, which for you who are following along, this is the 8th house. The 8th house has always been traditional investments, but more and more, because of different financial instruments and different ways people can invest, this is actually more about traditional methods of investing. Because nowadays, it's very easy to take a traditional investment like a stock or a bond, but trade it in a very risky manner, and like day trading. Versus you can take some what we would consider risky investments, and that is something that is highly volatile like Bitcoin, but take an attitude that's traditional like buy and hold, you kind of Warren Buffett it, and then it can fall under the category of traditional investments. So as we go forward in 2022, you're going to hear me shift this definition. Astrology is this growing, living thing. We always need to look at how the things in the world can suddenly, shift how we are looking at them in the chart. And so more and more, you're going to hear me talking about it with your 8th house, how that is going to be your traditional methods of investing. And then, of course, it's business income and family business income. And it's good. Long story short, you've got Moon, Sun, Venus, Pluto there. Venus is retrograde, so you may be looking back at, pulling in some money from a client or customer who owed you in the past, and now they're coming back to pay you finally. Or you might be going back to some type of investing that you used to do. And so again, there's some opportunities to make money. So the moon is making a semi-sextile to Saturn, so we're a little bit outside of the comfort zone, but that, I believe, is just you paying attention to something in a more deep fashion. And so that's where you're probably learning new terms or dealing with a new broker or, trying new ways to bring in customers. So I like this energy for making more money than usual. I think that's what's going to happen. So, and that is very much about how much you're willing to lean into a little bit of discomfort to make it happen. When it comes to money derived from career, that is getting a paycheck. The moon is making a semi-sextile to Mars. And so again, we have this sort of energy of, if you're willing to do a little bit new, a little bit outside of your comfort zone, you can gain. Now, what's probable in this sort of situation is that the raise that they're giving you is bundled together with some tasks or projects maybe that you didn't really want to do, but to accept one, you have to accept both. And so that's why it's a semi-sextile. Now, when it comes to what we had called risky investments, and now we're going to rename as risky methods of investing, although there's still a few traditionally risky investments. Oh boy, I'm really mixing my words here. There are still a few risky investments, inherently risky investments, and those would be like if you took $1 million of your money and that's all you had in the world to open a franchise. That's risky. So yeah, or if you are putting all of your time and energy into your YouTube channel, but it doesn't pay you a living yet. So those sort of things are inherently risky, and they are the fifth house. And so here, what we're seeing is no aspect going on between the moon and Venus. And so right now you're not making more money than usual. So be cautious in this type of investing. Okay, Cancer, you guys are doing this new moon in your house of relationships. And this is all types of relationships, love relationships, existing relationships, friendships, partnerships. In fact, this is about everyone that you meet. And so right now you have more of an ability to meet new people. And that's possibly because, maybe you are, we're home for the holidays and now you're going back into school. Maybe your area is opening up a little bit, although my area is not. So, but maybe it's just that you are now, like many of us, recognizing that a lot of these relationships are going to be online for a while. And so there's this idea that, you just accept that and, things start online and then someday we get to come together. So this new moon is about responsibilities and leaning into the hard work of things. And so that's where the connection to your relationships is the strongest. That means that it's time to work at your relationships. So you may say you're already working at your relationships, but if the relationship itself is still not where you want it to be, then maybe some shifts that you do can take it to a better place. It is also possible that you have to back away from what you've been doing and work on other relationships because the other person needs some time to catch up. It is also possible that you may say, this relationship just does not work. It doesn't work on paper. It doesn't work in real life. And so then you would be taking some steps to make changes in that. And that we see also with the Venus retrograde. It's possible that someone from your past is coming back and wants to give it another try, or where you had given something another try and it's still not working. And so now you're looking at some way to resolve the issue. Where we see your luck and expansion is actually in that area of the world and the universe and philosophy and religion, also education. And so this is that you can stumble upon the answers you're looking for. And of course, to do that, it starts with a question. It starts with you saying to yourself, what is it that I want to know about my relationships, or how to meet somebody, or what's a better way to connect with someone? And this might be, finding out about love languages or their core motivation or what really drives you. And so with that Jupiter there, you ask the question and then the universe just opens up and gives you the answer. And that's a really positive combination for you right now. So when it comes to relationships, of course, we just talked about a lot of that, but I just wanted to mention that the moon is making a semi-sextile to Saturn. So when it comes to meeting somebody new, what the universe is suggesting is that you step outside your comfort zone just a smidge. And that is that perhaps you strictly say that they can't be more than 3 years older or younger than you are. But someone comes along who's 4 years older or younger. Like, again, this is just a smidge. This isn't like dating somebody who's 20 years older. Or, perhaps you have not wanted to meet somebody online, but you find that all your friends have done it. They've done it successfully. They've had good experiences. Maybe it's time to stick your toe in the water and try that. Again, it's just going outside your comfort zone a little bit, and then some positive things can happen. When it comes to home and family, you're pulling energy from that Venus, which is retrograde. And so it's like the family is coming to something it was doing before. I was going to say coming back together, but if you were apart before and then you came together, now you're separating again. Now, this course could be for very legitimate reasons. Maybe your kids are going back off to college, or maybe just people are going home, after spending the holidays with you. But it's also possible that something you used to do together, something that, was, I don't know, like a family game night, a dinner together, something, maybe that is getting reinstituted where you can reestablish a tradition. That's the kind of energy that we're seeing. But this also has that possible negative side that if you were having a feud with someone, that feud can start up again. If there was anger or discord in the family, that also can rise up again. So, you want to be very selective about what you're repeating with this process. When it comes to your money, you're pulling money from the sun, which is in that house of relationships. And that means the more people you meet, the more money you potentially could make. So this is your time to reach out to colleagues who've moved on to different companies, and you find them through LinkedIn, or maybe you have their email address, and check in with them and see what they're doing. And, and that would be, of course, if you wanted a different job, or reaching out to clients or customers that you used to have and checking in with them, asking if they have any referrals for you. And that could start the process of some opportunities. This also can mean that you partner up with someone for a business purpose or some sort of investment. And so thinking about what your friends can do that, where your talents and their talents could combine into something that's greater than the sum of the parts. So there's some big opportunities for you, but it does mean you can't do it alone. You have to step out and meet other people. Now, when it comes to investments as well as business income or income from a family business, I'm making a shift in 2022. I have always called this traditional investments. That's what this house is, the 8th house. But I'm seeing more and more, because there are so many different ways to invest money, that a person could invest in a traditional investment, but in a super risky way. And that is through derivatives or options trading or, leverage trading. And so swing trading, day trading, there's so many different ways. So I want to point out that when we talk about this house for you, what we're really talking about is traditional methods of investing, because we're also seeing that some investments that I have been categorizing for the last, 3 or 4 years as risky investments now have ways to invest in them in a more traditional fashion. Yes, risky investments still have risk, but if you are taking a very long-term view of it, like a Warren Buffett view of something, well, then over time, it could still pay off and be classified as a traditional investment. So all of that said, if you are treating your investments as your grandparents would have treated them, which would be much more of a buy and hold situation, then what we're seeing is really great news. So, because you have new opportunities, because Mercury is sitting right there at 0 degrees, and also the sun is making a trine to Uranus. So you have potential to open up some new market or some new type of investment for yourself and make more money than usual over this 2-week period. So, but it's time to examine how you are investing or what you're investing in to determine whether this is really a truly traditional type of investing. Now, when it comes to money derived from career, which is going to be a paycheck from an employer, that there is no aspect going on between Venus and the Sun. However, they're closing in on each other because the Sun is moving forward and Venus is moving backwards. So it's, if right now you're getting a hard no on getting a raise or getting more hours or some way to increase your paycheck, it's whoever's saying the no is weakening. And so it's there, or they may say to you, it's not the right time to ask now, but ask us in a month, ask us in 2 months. So this is getting closer. And so maybe the best thing for you right now is just to bide your time, keep an eye on situations so that you can see if an opening comes up. I do think this opening to talk about this with them is outside this 2-week period. Now, when it comes to risky investments, and these are the things that are inherently really risky, and that is the day trading, sometimes swing trading. A lot of times it's so hard to time the market, where you're putting so much time, energy, or resources into it, like you're really rolling the dice and you only have one dice roll to do. And that would be like putting all of your money into a business, or worse, borrowing a bunch of money to go into business. Those are still going to fall in that risky investment category. And so, because, there's, you're putting all in one shot, or it's highly leveraged, which means that, if you win, it goes way, way up, but if you lose, it goes way, way down. So, yeah, long story short, there's no aspect between the Sun and Pluto. However, there's a semi-sextile between Sun and Mars. And so this does mean that being outside your comfort zone, you may be able to gain more money than usual over the next 2 weeks. And so looking for how you can learn more or work at it harder or do something that's slightly uncomfortable, and that can help you. All right, Leo, where you are doing this new moon, where you need to get more serious about your responsibilities, where you need to focus on what you're doing, is in the area of habits, routines, processes, your health, and your job. And so I know that's a lot of things. So starting with the routines that you have, if you have some negative routines, it's time to see if you can't shift those towards the positive. We've talked about this on this channel before, like books like Atomic Habits can be really helpful, or Mini Habits, that's also a good one. I'll put some links in the description. So shifting those habits, or, I was listening to a podcast and this guy was super focused on saving time. And so he would automate anything. He even automated it so he didn't have to get up to turn off a light switch, because that would save him 10 seconds. And if he added that up every single day over the course of his lifetime, that was enough for him to figure out how to, like use the clapper or something. So looking at your habits, and it's not just about productivity, it also might be that it's a habit for you at 7 p.m. to say that's it, you're not going to work anymore, and you end up maybe just eating ice cream in front of the TV when you had decided to give up sugar, when you've decided to give up TV, that sort of thing. And then like your novel doesn't get written, or you don't get to practice the guitar, things like that. It's like, how are your routines helping you, or how are they hindering you? And then when it comes to your job, it is on the daily aspects of your job. How are you taking responsibility? Sometimes we can get into work situations where nobody's doing their job and you're the only person doing your job, and it can be super frustrating. But you are then in integrity because you're doing your job as you're supposed to be doing it. And so then when it's time, it's much easier for you to find a better position either elsewhere or within the company. So it's better to live in a sense of integrity within yourself and not be so concerned with what other people are doing. And then finally, of course, health and well-being. What can you do on a daily basis where you're taking responsibility for your health? And that is that when we know we're doing something we shouldn't be doing and we do it anyway, and that's occasionally, that's fine, but when it's every day or multiple times a day, that can really compound into some health problems. Where we see Jupiter bringing you luck and expansion is in the area of resources, and it's going to be there on and off for a whole year, like we were talking about in the intro. And so this is your opportunity to get credit at a great rate, to get out of debt, to get more passive income sources. So you have some opportunities. These are just infancy right now. They're like the little seeds. We can't even see them on the surface yet, but it's going to change very soon where you can see what's working and what's not working, and you'll be able to adjust your course based on that. When it comes to relationships, you have exceptional energy. First of all, you have Mercury sitting on the ascendant-descendant line. That's fantastic. That can bring somebody interested in you. You have a trine going on between Sun and Uranus. So Saturn's there for long-term relationships. So everything's lining up. We just have to get you out of that sixth house long enough for you to meet the person. So the only dangers I'm seeing here is that you put it off, and it's easy to meet the person, but then it's easy to put off the date as well and say, oh, I'm so busy at work, or I was going to go running or something like that. Well, go running with the person, take a coffee break and see that person then. So, because this is really great energy for meeting somebody new, getting into a relationship, making a connection. When it comes to home and family, you're pulling energy from that Pluto as well as that Mars. Mars is really making a bunch of semi-sextiles here. And so everything's a little bit, kind of wonky. It's not destructive, it's not disruptive, it's not destructive or disruptive. It is just like a little rock in your shoe. It's just things are happening at home that just irritate you. Like there's extra noise outside, I wanted to shoot this video yesterday, but they were trimming trees and things like that. Or it's, like people aren't loading the dishwasher properly, or, you're trying to come together for a family meal, but everybody then has something else to do. So this is just small little things that you can build those into big things that make things awful, or you can just shrug it off and say, you know what, we'll have dinner tomorrow night. When it comes to your money, you're showing some new sources of money, and this is based on the people that you're meeting, because you're pulling energy from that Mercury in your house of other people. This means the more people you meet, the more money you can make. And so, you want to actually meet the people. So this is more than just listening to their podcast or watching their YouTube video, but this is actually reaching out to them through a direct message, or, actually sitting down with some of your friends who are successful, or maybe you have some family members who really know what they're doing, and sit down with them and ask them some questions. It is also about maybe going to networking meetings or meeting people through, Zoom conferences, things like that, where you can get some new ideas, but you can actually ask an individual. When it comes to money from investments or from income from a business or a family business. Now, and this is why this video is so long today, is in 2022, I'm shifting how I am looking at traditional investments versus risky investments. And in short, when we look at the 8th house in general, traditionally, that's always been traditional investments. So, but there are so many highly risky ways to do a traditional investment that it's getting all muddled. And so I'm shifting how I'm explaining what is coming up for you. Instead of saying this is traditional investments, stocks and bonds, it's more about doing investments in a traditional way. Because if you are doing your stocks and bonds in a risky way, you're not going to see the profits from that from this 8th house. You're going to see that from the 5th house of gambling and speculation. So this is the shift that I'm making in 2022, and so I'm trying to explain it to everybody. So if you are taking some sort of risky investment, but you are doing it in a more traditional way, such as a buy and hold, it's going to be represented by the energies of this house. And so bottom line is, it's how you are doing your Bitcoin or how you're doing your Amazon stock that is going to now determine where we're seeing your profits. I'm sorry if that sounds confusing. I hope it doesn't. I can do a video just on this idea if you want, but astrology is a living, growing thing, and we are constantly reclassifying things to fit with the, increases in technology, the modern age, because the books that I have were written long ago. These books don't have, Bitcoin in it, nor do they have, some of these highly leveraged ETFs even, because those things didn't exist when those books were written. Long story short, let's get back to you, the important person. So how is your money derived from traditional means or from your own business? It is no aspect between Mercury and Neptune. And that means making about the same as usual. However, here's the however, Jupiter has just gone into this house. It will be in this house on and off for a year. That's really wonderful. That's going to give you some huge bursts occasionally. Now, right now it's at 0, so it's very hard to capitalize on a 0 because everything's so new. It's kind of like planting a seed and then saying, where's my salad? It hasn't grown yet. So, but this will get better, and when it does, over the course of the next year, there's going to be periods of time where you can have quite a windfall. When it comes to money derived from career, and that would be getting a paycheck, Mercury is at 0, right on the descendant, so there is a possibility of making more money than usual, but you need to ask someone. You need to ask the right person. You need to ask them quite directly. And so you can sit down and have that conversation. Because Mercury is at 0, it may still be delayed. Remember that seed salad thing that I just said? So it could be delayed because of that. Like they say, yes, it's in the works, but it's still going to take 3 months. So, but the energy otherwise is quite positive. And then finally, when it comes to both risky investments or risky ways of doing investing, and the first one, risky investments, would be, taking your rent money and investing in Amazon, which is a traditional investment, is still risky because it wasn't disposable income. Well, it's not disposable. That's not the right word. It's income you're going to need sooner than that investment could pay off. So that can make it inherently risky. Or things that take a lot of time or energy to get going are inherently risky because you're doing most of it on spec. So those types of investments, you're getting a semi-sextile between Mercury and Jupiter, and they're both at 0. So big, huge possibilities, but nothing's really grown yet. So the semi-sextile says that you have to go outside your comfort zone. You have to consider how you're going to plant these seeds, and then you're going to have to wait a little bit to see what seeds are growing and make sure that weeds aren't choking out your seeds, etc. So there are some possibilities of making more money over the next 2 weeks, but because of the 0, it's almost like you're seed scattering. Like you're like, I'll try this, I'll try this, I'll try this, I'll try this, and then you have to see what grows. Okay, Virgo, where you guys are doing this new moon and where you have increased responsibility and a need to lean in and work at something is in this area of children, creativity, fertility, and how you have fun. So I know it sounds weird, like taking responsibility for the fun, but starting with that is where you might want to have more fun in your life. You might want to do new things, but you end up doing the same old thing because it's easy, or you're tired, or you didn't think of the new thing to do. And so taking responsibility in that way is to just put it on the calendar, or to research, like, where is the park you wanted to go to, or what is the event you wanted to attend, and did you get the tickets, and things like that. When it comes to your creativity, taking responsibility is leaning in and getting better at what it is that you do. That's that Cal Newport idea that he said, be so good they can't ignore you. That's the idea of, if you love it, you do it. And so in my younger days, I wanted to be a writer, and I heard this famous writer talk, and he said, writers write. And at the time, I was barely writing at all. And so if I wanted to be a writer, I have to write, I think Stephen King was very famous for saying that, he would write every day except for Christmas and his birthday. And then he would follow that up with, but I'm lying because I write on Christmas and my birthday as well. So if you are wanting to be an artist, if you want to be a creative, you have to work at that. And yeah, it's possible you have very little time to do that. Maybe you only have 5 minutes a day, but then take the 5 minutes and work on your craft. And then when it comes to children, now the responsibility is, what's your responsibility and what's their responsibility. And so you're looking at that division. They may be doing something that is not your responsibility. Maybe they're an adult child, and so they need to take responsibility. Or maybe it's, in some of those parenting things that they tell you, your responsibility to feed, clothe them, make sure that they're safe. But it's not your responsibility to provide them unlimited Wi-Fi. That's a privilege. And so looking at these sort of things is where you're focusing your energy over the next 2 weeks. Where we see Jupiter bringing you luck and opportunity is in your house of other people. And that is, you have a great opportunity to meet somebody who's instrumental in your future, possibly a friend, a mentor, an influencer, somebody who could be very valuable on your spiritual journey. So be open to meeting new people. If somebody wants to introduce you to someone, say yes. Be willing to maybe go to a Zoom conference every once in a while. I know sometimes we're a little zoomed out, but if you can meet more people, you will have more luck. Now, that said, when it comes to relationships, Mercury is not making an aspect with Neptune, and so you might meet this person for a love relationship, but you can't quite get together yet. So you might be talking by text or phone, but the timing might be off for actually getting together. So be patient in this. It's also possible you'll meet for a first date, but you can't quite get together for the second date, or the person seems to disappear. Again, it's just the aspects not lining up. So just be patient. When it comes to home and family, you're doing some really good energy, but something brand new is happening. And that is that we see it represented by the Jupiter at 0, making that semi-sextile to the Mercury at 0. So something that's new, maybe you just moved and you're unpacking, maybe you have new neighbors, maybe somebody is coming home to stay for a while, or maybe somebody's moving out. So something brand new is happening, but I see it as positive, even though it's just slightly uncomfortable. It's slightly outside of what you normally do. And so there might be a little tiny learning curve, like when you move into a new place, it's all fresh and new and clean, but you can't find where you put the scissors because the scissors don't have a home yet. That sort of thing. When it comes to your money, you're pulling money from that Venus, which is retrograde, which means that sources of money that you have made, where you've made money before, are coming back to you. And so this is, let's say you were making money from art, but you never made that much. Maybe it's time to give that another try. And maybe it's because there's different marketing, or more people buy online, or you have more fans in general. So looking at something that you've done before as a source of money is a possibility. Now, this can also say that if somebody owes you money, it's time to reach out to them because maybe you can get them on a payment plan. Maybe they'll surprise you with a check. So, but money that's owed to you can come back during the retrograde period. Okay, when it comes to investments and money from a business or a family business, I have this little speech that I'm doing for each and every sign, which is making this video super long, which is that my definitions of traditional investments versus risky investments are changing in 2022. And this is because there are so many ways these days to take a very traditional investment, but invest in it in a very risky way, which you're not going to see the gains in the 8th house. You're going to see those in the 5th house because that's gambling. And so that would be, you could take a very solid stock like Amazon, but then you could do some sort of leveraged derivative option on it where it's just super risky. On the other hand, you could take an inherently risky investment such as Bitcoin, which has high volatility, but if you were to buy today and plan to keep it for 20, 30, 40 years, it becomes much less risky. In fact, you are doing it in a very traditional way. So the definitions that I'm shifting here is when we see gains for you in the 8th house, those are investments that you make in a traditional way, though they do not necessarily have to be investments that your grandparents knew about. So now, all of that said, you're not doing an aspect between Venus and Mars, and so you're not showing more gains in your business or in investments over the 2-week period. And that is basically because Venus going backwards hasn't yet reached that aspect with Mars. So we see it out here in the distance, but it hasn't reached you yet. And so that is, that maybe you've done the job and the client has 30 or 60 or 90 days to pay you. Or you're seeing, little tiny bumps up in your investments, but not enough for you to actually take some profits. So we see things happening better in the future. Now, the trend continues with money derived from career, and that is getting a paycheck. No aspect is going on between Venus and the moon. And so, but again, they're getting closer. The moon is moving forward, Venus is moving backwards. So I think that if you asked, they would say, yes, ask again in the spring, or, we have to wait till the merger's done, or maybe we can give you more hours in the future. So everything is based on, if you can wait, then you can get it. Now, when it comes to risky methods of investing, and still risky investments, because there are some investments that are by nature risky, and that is, if you're taking money you can't afford to lose and investing it in anything, that's risky. But there's also, just like building a business from scratch where you're investing a ton of money, that's risky. Or if you are trying to make a living from your music and so you have to do a ton on spec, that for who knows, like years, you're just getting pennies from Spotify, then this is risky. So, but, okay, so long story short, you're doing a ton of energy in this area, but there is no aspect right now between Venus and Saturn. So what this says is, this is a time to lean in and really do your research. Get all the ducks in a row. But right now, it's not lining up to get profits from this. You're not showing the accumulation of the money from this source. So, but with so much energy, maybe you're really investigating Bitcoin or NFTs or other types like buying a franchise or things like that. So the investigation is very important right now, but the profits are not happening during this 2-week period. Okay, Libra, where you guys are doing this new moon where you have to take more responsibility or work harder or lean in is in the area of home and family. So in the very mundane sense, this might be that you are moving or that you just moved and you are unpacking, or this is that, you are reorganizing the house, decluttering, where you are trying to get things to work better and more efficiently for you, and be a more comfortable place, do the feng shui and all that. And by the way, I have a lot of, well, I don't know, a lot. I have some videos on feng shui and different things you can do. They're on this channel, so I hope you'll check those out. Now, when it comes to responsibilities within the family, this is more about looking at what you're responsible for versus what the other person is responsible for. And so if you are taking on responsibilities that don't belong to you, that needs to be remedied. If you are not taking responsibility for some aspects in the home, then that needs to be worked on too. And so this may be that you're sitting down with the people that you live with to say, here are all the things that need to be done in the house, and let's divide things up. Now, because this energy of the fourth house also rules real estate, this can be that you are leaning in and learning more about buying and selling properties or different ways of investing in real estate. So that's a possibility. Or the hard work that we're seeing in this area means you are repairing something. So that could be renovating the house or, redecorating, but mostly it's the harder stuff. This isn't about buying some throw pillows. This is more like redoing a kitchen, painting a room, redoing a floor, doing the roof, things like that. And then finally, this is going to extend to some extended family. And so taking responsibility or working with, maybe finding a home for your parents who need more help, helping your kid, figure out their first apartment, or telling your kids they have to move because they're old enough to move out, or letting them come back in. When we look at Jupiter and where your luck is and where new opportunities are growing and expanding, it's in your area of work, health, and your routines. So when we look at your routines, it means that you can adopt new routines that save you time, energy, that make you happier and healthier. It means that you could have a breakthrough when it comes to your health, where you could just have a little shift inside of you that says, oh, you know what? I can do something different. I can, eat more slowly and then, digest my food better. Or maybe you recognize that you really don't need to have sugar in your life and you can just let that go. So there's something here where the universe is helping you out, bringing you luck, and it's in this area. Now, it's also job, which means that maybe you hit it off with a coworker and this person becomes very supportive, or that you are focusing on, building a team. Now, when it comes to relationships, there's no aspect going on between Venus and Mars, and almost everything is below the horizon, which means that you're not really seen. And so if you are actively looking for a relationship, you're going to have to kind of jump up and down a little bit to be noticed. And so even you might see a drop off on your online dating profiles, on the hits you're getting. It is possible that people won't even show up for a date. And don't take it personally. Your focus is so much about home and things, that are related to your little world. It's hard right now to be seen by the rest of the world. Now, when it comes to home life, we did just talk a lot about that. I just wanted to point out a couple of extra things, and that is one, that Venus is retrograde in that house. So it's possible that something is happening again. And that could be, if you are moving, you've probably moved before, you know how to do this, you might even be using the same boxes, or the same number system. But it's also possible if someone has moved out that they are moving back in, or if they have moved back in, they're moving out again. And so something may be happening again. Still, this is one of the most active areas in your chart over the next 2 weeks with the moon, sun, Venus, and Pluto there. That's a lot of energy. So that's really where the focus should be at this time. When it comes to your money, you're pulling money from that Pluto in that fourth house. So we were talking about that already, about real estate possibilities that could exist, but also, like getting a roommate who's paying you money, or renting out part of your house as Airbnb, or even just having a business at home. That could be a source of generating money for you. Now, also though, you're pulling energy from that Mars, which is making a semi-sextile to this new moon. And so the energy is very much around doing something that's a little bit outside your comfort zone. That is, try to do something new, try to adjust how you look at money in general. So that is, if you tend to say, all right, I'm not going to count how much is in my bank account, maybe just for a month, or 2 weeks, actually, keep track of your spending, keep track of the fees that you're charged, keep track of what is coming in and what is going out. Or maybe you want to be more of an active investor over this time. And so again, just monitoring things if that's not what you normally do. If you normally hyper monitor things, maybe this is to back off a little on that and go work on something else. Now, when it comes to investments as well as income from business or a family business, I'm doing this little speech, and this is why this video is so long, is because after careful research, I am shifting in 2022 how I'm looking at the 8th house versus 5th house. And that starts with the idea that 8th house, which has always been traditional investments, I am seeing a lot of people do, take a very traditional security, like buying Amazon stock, but doing it in a very risky manner, like using their rent money, or, going in and out and doing, high frequency trading and things like that. That you're not going to see the income or the benefits from that from an 8th house perspective. You're going to see that from 5th house because it's gambling. And so I'm shifting how I'm defining these for you so that it can be clear. When we look at your 8th house for traditional investments, this would be traditional methods of investing. So, and that includes if an investment is very new. So, and that would be the difference between, say, a Bitcoin, and that is, a BTC. So very, very much Bitcoin done in a more traditional manner, such as just buy and holding it for 20, 30, 40 years, versus one of the smaller coins, one of the 7,000 smaller coins out there that have no track record and may have some dodgy software and, are highly, highly volatile. Those are going to be risky investments. So there is a difference here. And so I decided in 2022 to have a more nuanced conversation with you about the possibilities of where you're going to make money. And all that said, there is a conjunction going on between Venus and Pluto. However, it's separating because Venus is retrograde. So this means that there is some ways to make more money in your business, family business, or through traditional methods of investing, but the energy is dissipating. So, which either means that time is running out or that it's getting less and less and less. And again, this is only over a 2-week period. So you do have some abilities to accumulate money. So you lean in, get what you can. And then as these two separate, then, when we talk about the full moon in a couple of weeks, we may not see these lining up. So there's an opportunity now to make more money through traditional methods of investing as well as your own business. Now, when it comes to money derived from career, the sun is not making an aspect to Pluto, but it is making a semi-sextile to Mars, which does say that if you are willing to get a little bit outside your comfort zone, that you could get more money or more hours. Now, what I expect is that they may say to you, oh, you have to come into the office, or you have to do some other thing that's slightly uncomfortable, slightly, extra work to get this. So there seem to be combining it with some sort of action that you have to do. So you could wait until this lines up better before you ask. When it comes to risky methods of investing or actual risky investments, and there are still going to be some risky investments out there. Like I said, you can take a traditional method for a super, super risky investment, like one of these little coins that's selling for a millionth of a penny, and it's still going to be, we're going to see the returns from this fifth house. Or if it's something like where you're having to do a lot of work up front, so it's very much on spec, like it is writing a novel, to see those returns, you have to write the entire novel and then upload it and then see if people read it. That is going to be in this fifth house. So when it comes to risky investments or risky methods of investing, Mars is making a sextile to Saturn. So you do have an opportunity. Now, Mercury's there at 0 degrees, so this might be a brand new project that you're doing. And so it's going to still take a little bit of work, but there is an opportunity. A sextile means that you take an action and then something of benefit can come. So I do feel there's something here for you, but because the Mercury is at 0, it's probably something brand new that you're working on. Okay, Scorpio, where you're doing this new moon and where the focus is on working harder, taking responsibility, really leaning in, is in the area of contracts, agreements, communication, neighbors, siblings. Oh, and your vehicle. So when it comes to your vehicle, this may just mean that it needs a little TLC, that you have to, get it washed or detailed, or you need an oil change or something like that. When it comes to neighbors, this could mean that you are striving to try to be a better neighbor so that you can get some connection going with these people. But when we deal with this energy with other people, we are actually looking at what is our responsibility versus their responsibility. So that's where the balance comes in, and that's with neighbors as well as siblings. So you might think, all right, as a sibling, these are the things I'm going to do, and then maybe the other person agrees to that or doesn't agree, and so that's where we work out things. But the biggest energy, I think, here is in communication, contracts, and agreements. And where the responsibility, or where you have to lean in, is to figure out what the contract says. And hopefully before you sign it, but if you're trying to get out of the contract, now that you have it in hand, to figure out what you did sign. And so this is maybe some legal stuff is going on. Maybe you're signing a contract for employment or to buy a house, or, I know we pass those terms and conditions so quickly when we get new software. We just say, fine, we'll do it. But every once in a while, it's just, like if your intuition says, nah, I should read this, then go ahead and read it, because there's something there that you need to see before you click, I agree. And because Venus is retrograde in this house for you, you could also be looking at how you communicate with some people and adjusting. Now, it's also possible that you are going back to an old way of communicating with that person, and maybe that's beneficial, or maybe you're falling back into a bad habit. So looking at how you're communicating with people and seeing what they respond to is a lot of this energy. When it comes to relationships, you're doing some pretty powerful energy. Even though Venus is retrograde and moving away from Pluto, there is still a connection. And so if you're wanting to meet someone new for a relationship, you can. Now, you have such strong communication energy that I would expect that you're the one that needs to reach out to this person. And that can be that, you reach out through text, or even just to say, hey, I had a good time the last time we spoke, and then see what happens. Or you're the one setting up the date, but you still have positive energy here, so you can connect. When it comes to home and family, something new is happening because Mercury is at 0 degrees in that house, so something new is happening, and that might be that kids are going back to college, or somebody has decided that they're moving in. Maybe you are unpacking from a recent move, or maybe you just finished some renovations. Maybe you're starting renovations, and so now the place has got chaos and excitement and things like that. Also, Mars is making it's making a sextile to Saturn, which means there's opportunities for good communication and some happy things going on at home. When it comes to your money, there's also some good news here too, because a new source of money is coming into your life. Jupiter is at 0, and it is now going to bring you some sort of expansion or luck. I forgot to mention your luck. Jupiter is your source of luck right now, and it's in your house of creativity and risks and adventure. And it's going to be there on and off for a year. And so this means there are some major opportunities that are going to come up that where they might to other people seem quite risky. You, through curiosity, you're just interested, you are likely to lean in and discover something new. And so it's also possible, if we pull this back from the money perspective, is that you're the first one in your group to explore a new type of investment. You're the first one in your group to open a business. You're the first one in your group to partner with somebody, an influencer or a company or something. And so you're blazing the trail. Now, additionally, about your money, the North Node and South Node are just about to exit your money houses, which is a good thing, because when they are going through money houses, you're learning a lot, but you can't really capitalize on it. Now, the difficult part is you only have a couple more weeks if there's anything you need to learn. Now, the North Node, which is the point of learning, is in your house of investments, passive income sources, business income, credit, and debt. And so those are the things that you need to work on. Make sure that you have learned the lessons that you need to learn over the next couple of weeks, because you won't have another chance to work on this for 18 years. So that is that, if you have never figured out what interest rates are, or you don't know how to even open a brokerage account, like we're talking about the baby steps here. If you got the baby steps down, over the last year and a half, you have learned all the things you've needed to learn. But if you ask yourself, is there something still I need to learn? And an answer pops up, go do that thing. Now, when it comes to investments as well as income from your business or a family business, I'm doing this long little speech, which is why this video is so long. So astrology is a living, breathing science, and it changes over time as new inventions come up, as people themselves, as society changes. We need to look at the chart and figure out what rules what. And so up until this point, I have always said that the 8th house is about traditional investments, which it is. But I am seeing more and more from people, in my community and, my tribe. So that people are doing taking a traditional instrument, but doing it in a very risky fashion. And you're not going to see the benefits or the results in the 8th house. You're going to see that in the 5th house of gambling. Additionally, we are seeing some inherently risky investments, and specifically like a Bitcoin, but if they're done in a very traditional manner, could be very beneficial, but also we would see those benefits in the 8th house, not the 5th house. And of course, by Bitcoin, I'm just meaning the Bitcoin, not some of these way riskier investments that, these tiny little coins that are based on software and not the original. So those are still going to fall in the 5th house. So anyway, you're going to hear me use different language going forward in 2022 to describe where you're going to be making your profits. And that was the speech. So, okay. Let's get to it. When we are looking at your investments, and these are investments, no matter what they are, but done in a traditional manner, which is in a conservative manner with money you can afford to lose and probably a long-term hold, you are doing a sextile. You're doing a semi-sextile between Mercury and Jupiter, and they're both at 0. So something brand new is happening, something that you can feel optimistic about, but it is outside your comfort zone. So some sort of, like new clients, new territory, new type of investment that you're doing, but you are if it's investment, you're doing it in a way that your grandparents would say, oh yeah, I know what you're doing, So they may never have heard of the investment, but they understand your methods. And the same with your business. Something is expanding, something is growing, it's brand new, so it's hard to put your finger on, but it's showing really good opportunities for profit when you step outside your comfort zone. Now, when it comes to money derived from career, something brand new is happening there as well. And this means perhaps you are in a new job, or the job itself that you have is changing. Maybe you're changing departments, maybe just your job description is changing. But as it changes, you have the opportunity to say, give me more money. If the changes come and you say, please don't change anything, it's harder to get new money. So because you're not activating the new energy. So if you say, I just want to do what I was doing before, then they're going to say, fine, but we're not going to give you more money. So, but otherwise, if you're willing to step outside of what you've done in the past and do something new, you're likely to make more money in the next 2 weeks. Now, when it comes to investments done in a risky fashion or risky investments, and there are still going to be risky investments, and those would be things that take a lot of time, energy, or money to get going. And so that would be like, wanting to be a musician. And so for a long time, you're not making much. You don't have a lot of fans. You're having to practice a lot. So there's the risk in that if you put in all that time and energy, that you will someday make it. And so these are fifth house energies, and there is no aspect going on right now between Jupiter and Neptune. Now, Jupiter is going to move through Pisces lickety-split, and they are going to line up. So you are going to hear me talking about this. Jupiter will be in Pisces on and off all through 2022. We talked about that during the opening. So this is going to line up at some point, but right now it's not lining up exactly. It says there's something new going on, that you're learning a lot, you have some luck in this area. The actual money reaching your account doesn't happen in this 2-week period. Okay, Sagittarius natives, where you guys are doing this new moon and need to take responsibility or look at division of responsibilities, or to work harder or lean in, is in your area of money. And so this could be that you need to be more responsible with how you're handling money, or keep better track of things. Or maybe this is where you're dividing up responsibilities for household expenses. Some of this comes from self-reflection, where you are asking yourself, could I do better at handling my money? Is there some things I need to learn? Is there ways where I could be more adult about this, where I'm taking on responsibilities? This is the energy. And when you ask those questions, then the energy pops up. It's a lot of the times we don't like to ask ourselves these questions, because then we get an answer and then we have to do that thing. So, but over the next couple of weeks, this is where the focus is. If you want to make a lot more money, it starts right there. Is how can I handle my money better? How can I keep spending in check? How can I look for other sources of money? So focusing on that can help you. And then this is about, when you're dealing with other people, of deciding what's your responsibility versus their responsibility. Now, where we see Jupiter bringing you luck and opportunities, it's right at the base of your chart. So this is that you can get a lot of luck by having conversations with your family. And that can be, maybe your family gives you a bunch of money. That's a possibility. But it's also that you can spot the family pattern, where you can look at a sibling or a cousin and how they handle money, and see yourself as a mirror, or in the mirror of, what it is that they're doing. It's also possible that you are reaching out to ancestors that through prayer or meditation, and waking up in the morning with new ideas about how to handle money. It's also possible that family members have been giving you ideas of different ways to make money, but you've been kind of focused on what you were doing, and now you can suddenly hear it. And this And you might say, oh my gosh, you've never said that to me before. And they would say, oh no, we've said it many times, but they just said it in a way where now everything's clicking together. When it comes to relationships, you're doing some really great energy. So the North Node, South Node are still there, and Mercury and Jupiter are making a semi-sextile. I know that's not the best aspect, but it is an aspect, and they're both at 0. So this means meeting somebody brand new, somebody like you've never dated before, somebody who's just a little bit outside your comfort zone. You know, maybe they are a little older or younger than you normally date. Maybe they're from a different place, or they have, you know, a slightly different faith, you know, or they have a different faith, but you're not as bothered by that anymore, or different political views, and you're okay with that. So something's different, something's happening, and this can allow you to meet new people. And with that North Node, South Node there can be definite energy around feeling like it's meant to be, or feeling like they're familiar somehow, even though you haven't, you know, been to the country they're from or something, you know, in that sort of light. When it comes to home and family, you've got that Jupiter there at 0 degrees. And as I said before, Jupiter is going to go in and out of this house all year in 2022. And that means that there are this luck and possibilities and expansion happening. So in 2022, there could be an addition to the family. That could be through somebody getting married, somebody moving in, a pregnancy, or you're getting more pets. There's extra luck happening at home. So, you know, something might break, but somebody has an exact thing that you need, and it costs much less than you thought. So we see luck happening. So there's lots of opportunities, but specifically in the next 2 weeks, something new is happening in the family. So somebody's making an announcement of something that's pretty important, and that's happening in the next 2 weeks. When it comes to your money, we talked already a lot about your money, but there's a couple more things to say. And one is that you pull money from that Saturn, which is making the semi-sextile to that new moon. So that specifically says, step outside what's comfortable. Do what is uncomfortable and unfamiliar, and at some point in time, it will become familiar. But it is, until you do something different, you're not going to get different results. And so you may hate writing down all the things that, you know, all the money you spend, but you try it for a couple of weeks and it's life-changing. Or you might, you might say you absolutely need streaming services and you need all of them, but you cancel half of them or you cancel all of them, and you find you have more time, more energy, you have more ability to make money. So look for small things that might be slightly uncomfortable to do and watch different money opportunities pop up. I think you'll be amazed. Now, when it comes to investments and money that comes from a business or a family business, I'm having to do this little speech, which is what's making this video so incredibly long. And that is that in astrology, when new things come, we astrologers try to get together and figure out how that's going to manifest in the chart. And so in 2022, you're going to hear me shift my thinking, because I've given this a lot of thought now, that 8th house, which is normally traditional investments like stocks and bonds, I'm seeing so many people take a traditional investment but invest in it in a method that is decidedly risky. And we're not going to see the gains from that in the 8th house. We're going to see that in the 5th house of gambling. And so that would be like taking your rent money and using a leveraged ETF to invest in the market. So an ETF in, like an index fund, that's pretty traditional. But using money you can't afford to lose and doing it in a leveraged fashion, that's risky. So that's one. But there's a flip side of this coin too. Keep hitting the mic. There's a flip side of this coin as well, and that is that, speaking of coins, and that is there's ways to do something like Bitcoin, but in a very traditional way. And that would be that you just buy it and then you hold it for 20 years. That's a traditional method of investing. And Bitcoin, which has now been around for 10 years, which is showing, I mean, it still shows incredible volatility, definitely. And I did do a video on some of the Saturn-Uranus square and how it's affecting Bitcoin. So there's a link to that in the description. Where was I? So that, yes, there are methods to do an actual Bitcoin in a traditional way where we would see the benefits or the profits in the 8th house. There's tons of coins out there that are just risky. And, you know, you could buy and hold and still lose all your money. So, or there's also very risky investments that are just risky by nature, which we'll talk about in a second. Okay, so going back to your house of investments done in a traditional way, as well as money from your business or a family business. Sorry, I have to look because I've forgotten here. The moon is making a semi-sextile to Saturn. And so, again, you're going to hear me continue to say this because there's so many semi-sextiles now. That is, get outside your comfort zone, do something slightly different. And maybe that is, instead of just assuming that your broker knows, investigate, or assuming that this broker can't lower your fees. Look into that. Maybe if the customer that you're trying to get, sell something to, maybe their objections could be overcome if you got out of your regular pitch and just, had a conversation with them. So, or perhaps there's some other business thing that you can do that suddenly, ups your profits. So we see opportunities for you to make profits over the next 2 weeks, but it is when you do something or you lean in a little bit or you do something you haven't done before. Now, when it comes to money derived from career, and this is income from a job, Venus is not making an aspect to Saturn. Plus Venus is retrograde. So if you do ask for a raise at this time, they're just going to say, come back later, or they're going to say, stop asking. You've asked us this before. So it's probably best that you don't say that. Now, it is possible that if the job has owed you some money in the past, that can come through while Venus is retrograde. However, it may not come through in this 2-week period because the energy is not lined up with your account. So that would be your boss coming in and say, hey, that overtime that we owed you for, that's going to be not in this check, but in the next check. And so you get it outside the 2-week period. Now, when it comes to investments you do in a risky way or inherently risky investments, and those are the things that take a lot of time, energy, or a huge amount of money to get going, so you feel like you're rolling the dice, you are doing a sextile between Mars and Saturn. So there is some possibilities of making some money through this method over the next 2 weeks, and that is that, again, I can't say enough. Please be careful. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm an astrologer. And so see your financial advisor, get good financial advice before you do anything that's risky. This is, I'm just trying to give you information here. So please follow that. But I do like this energy. This sextile is nice. Keep hitting this microphone. And so consider that, if you were looking, if you're already in a risky investment, maybe this is the time where you can take some profit. Okay, Capricorn, this is your new moon. And so where you need to look at taking responsibility or working harder or leaning in is in your relationships with others. And that is what is your responsibility versus what is their responsibility. Now, if you're listening to this as a Capricorn, then part of your life lesson is about responsibility. If you are Capricorn rising and you're listening to this, which you should, you already understand responsibility very, very well. And so the sun sign is what we're learning and the ascendant is what we know. And so when the difference here is that you might be looking at the division of responsibilities, or where inherently that you should be taking responsibility, but you're not, or where you need to work harder at something. I've seen this with people where there's this idea where things, like if you have a talent for it, it should come naturally and easily. But the moment they lean in and say, you know what, I want this, I'm really going to put in the time and effort, they like 10x their ability for success. It just, they just, because they did have the talent, but the talent still takes practice. It still takes thought. It still takes effort. And so this is your ability to really like take what you're doing to the next level by saying, I'm willing to commit the time and energy necessary, or to take the responsibility for the outcome of it. And at the same time, though, you do need to be weighing where you're taking responsibility for somebody else's stuff when it belongs to them. And so sometimes people say that guilt is misplaced responsibility. Sometimes you feel guilty because, we've done something wrong and we shouldn't have done that. But sometimes we're feeling guilty because somebody says, oh, you made me do such and such, you made me this. And that was their choice to experience it in that fashion. So basically what this is asking yourself the question of, where do I need to lean in? Where do I need to say to myself, if I want to be great at this, I'm going to have to put in the work. I'm going to have to be responsible and do this. Or where in your life are you just not being responsible and you should be? Now, where we see your luck and expansion is Jupiter, and that is in your area of communication and thinking process in general. And that means you can get enormous amount of ideas. Like if you just open up and say, all right, I've decided that I'm going to work more at this, whether that is your business or your creative venture or your relationship. And then suddenly you see that, oh yeah, I knew about this love language thing. And then you can say, oh, and we have conflicting love languages. Maybe there's a way we can reconcile this. Or you say to yourself, you know what, if my people are on Instagram and I'm not doing Instagram, oh, you know what, this is just going to take a little work to get it set up, and then that can happen. So this is where you're going to get tons of ideas, and synchronicity happens to make the luck. This also says that there might be a contract or agreement coming in that you've been hoping for. And so, but of course, I want you to, make sure that you read the contract before signing it, because just because you have luck doesn't mean the contract is good. The luck would say that you would spot the thing that was not good and you'd be able to negotiate. So when it comes to relationships, the Saturn's making a semi-sextile with the moon, and so there is many relationship opportunities right now for you. It's very easy for you to meet new people, but it is a semi-sextile, so you have to go outside your comfort zone, and that means you have to go to a new place, like go to a different type of meeting, go to a different coffee shop, or, do Zoom meetings. Even though you're so bored with Zoom meetings, you just do them anyway because you get to meet new people. And this is also, like if you've thought that online dating wasn't for you, but your friends are having good experiences with it, then you look into it. So it's that sort of thing. It's like outside your comfort zone, and that's what helps you meet people. Additionally, you might find that the people themselves are slightly different than the types you've been out with before. Maybe they are a different religion, or they're a different branch of politics, or from a different country. And so you are expanding your world that way. So when it comes to home and family, you're pulling energy from that Mars that is in your hidden house. So there's a lot going on, kind of behind the scenes. It's making a sextile with that Saturn. So that could be you're doing some renovations at home, and so you're not telling anybody until it's done. Or somebody might be moving in, but it's all quiet right now. You're not telling people that they're moving in. So there's something going on. It's a little bit hidden, and it will come out later and be beneficial. But right now, it's just, you're not telling a bunch of people about it. When it comes to your money, you're pulling money from that Uranus, which is making a lovely trine to that new moon in your own sign. So it's like things are lining up. Again, as you put yourself forward, I usually say that when you're doing stuff in the first house or in your own sign, that is, if you put your name on it, then money can come to you. So I think that that's very strong. Additionally, you're pulling money from the Saturn, which is making the semi-sextile to this new moon, which is, again, that's being outside the comfort zone. So we have the trine, which is the easy stuff, and then we can get more by doing the harder things. This would also say that, sources of money are very close. That this isn't some long reach, like you don't have to think completely outside the box. This is just taking some different actions than usual. And that might mean that you are, phoning up people when normally you'd send a text, or again, showing up to the Zoom meeting and everybody says, oh my gosh, you showed up to the Zoom meeting, that sort of thing. When it comes to investments and money from a business or a family business, I have an announcement to make, and this is why this video is so incredibly long. And it is because I am shifting my ideas about what rules what. And astrologers, we do this over periods of time. So as there are innovations, as there are new things come up, we need to figure out how they integrate with the astrological system. Because yes, I have tons of books, from, some of I have reprints and translations of books that are, 1,000 years old. And they didn't know about the stock market then. They didn't know about Bitcoin then. So they didn't know about these things. So we then have to take these modern concepts and fit them into the charts. And so in 2021 and before that for years, I have been talking about the 8th house as being your source of traditional investments. And that is true. I mean, that's the tradition, or that's the usual way we talk about it. However, I am seeing that with so many different financial instruments and so many ways for people to invest, there are now a lot of extremely risky ways to invest in traditional investments. And that is, you can buy just stock in Amazon, which would be, something that your grandparents would have said, yeah, I can understand what you're doing here. I understand the process. But now, instead of just buying the stock, people are doing highly leveraged options trading for a traditional stock. And so those returns, if you're going to get any, are going to be in the 5th house, not the 8th house. And so, and then, before I was going to say long story short, but it's going to get longer. So, and that is that when we look at risky investments, there are now emerging some what could have been considered risky investments, and that might be just a Bitcoin versus one of the other altcoins. Those are going to stay risky for a while. But if you were to use a traditional method of, say, buying Bitcoin, and that is just a buy and hold, you're going to hold it for 20 years, this Bitcoin could turn out to be a traditional investment. So all of that said, you're going to hear me talk about these in a slightly different way, which I'm hoping will give you even more accurate predictions. So now, when we are looking at investments done in a traditional manner, or your home business, your family business, your own business, this is the sun is making a trine to Uranus. So there is a great opportunity for you to make more money during this 2-week period. So that means you do want to lean in and see what you can do in your business to expand it. Look through your investments and see what's happening with those, because something good looks like it's happening. When it comes to money derived from career, and that is money that you make from an employer, that's not changing. So Saturn is making a sextile to Mars. So there is an opportunity to get more money through a job, and that is more hours or more income. It's a good time to ask. This is, if you do an action, you get some good benefits. So, and because the Mars is hidden, I think you're the one that has to ask. I don't think they're going to come to you and say, hey, we want to give you more money. I think it's you ask and they say, okay. And then when it comes to either investments done in a risky fashion or really risky investments. And there are really some risky investments out there. And that would be like things that take a lot of time or energy to do. Like if you're writing a novel, that's a lot of upfront work. And then you upload it to Amazon and maybe it's a success and maybe it's not. So that's highly risky. Additionally, anytime you're taking anytime you're taking funds you can't afford to lose, it doesn't matter what the investment is. That's risky. And so if there's going to be any profits, we're going to see them based on that fifth house. And so there is no aspect going on between Venus and Uranus, and there's no aspect between Venus and Saturn. And so it's very difficult for you to get some profits over the next 2 weeks. So be super careful if you are doing anything like that, because Venus is retrograde. So there's a real strong tendency to try to go back to something you've done before. And that, yeah, it's not lining up this time. Okay, Aquarius, you're doing this new moon in your house of intuition. It's your inner life, sleep, recuperation, but also where we can become kind of addicted to things. Not kind of, we can become addicted to things. And that's everything, from the, everyday stuff like sugar, television, all the way to, hard drugs and stuff. So this is where the new moon is lighting up for you to say, where you need to take responsibility, where you need to lean in and work at something to make your life better. And so, just starting with spirituality, this might mean that, you need to do the spiritual things that you think about, like meditation, or maybe you want to light a candle every day and read some spiritual texts, or maybe you want to do some journaling so that you can bring in some information, and it's just time to sit down and do it. So this may be about taking responsibility where you can about sleep, looking at sleep science, and where you can, go and get a sleep study done so that you can get better sleep. Or maybe it is that, you're staying up really late and you're watching a lot of exciting television and then you're trying to sleep, or eating a lot of sugar and then trying to sleep. And maybe what that is, instead looking at like going to bed way earlier and reading a really boring book, something like that. So, and that would be a real switch. And then, of course, this is about if you do struggle with some sort of addiction, to find out what part is your responsibility, what part is out of your control, and then, finding where those boundaries are about that, and continuing to work hard about, staying away from things that are, interrupting your life. Now, where you have luck and extra resources is in your area of money. So it's probable that more money is coming in, or that there's some sort of benefits, possibly gifts or helpful people that can give you something of a material benefit to help you through. And so this is where we see things getting much better for you. And of course, these things work kind of hand in hand. As you take better care of yourself, then you're more able to take hold of those new opportunities that are coming in. Now, Jupiter is going to be going through your house of money for a whole year. It's going to be in and out of this house. So there's going to be periods of time where money gets easier. When money is easier, sometimes it will feel like it's just flowing in, like, you're so good at this and you don't have to do anything. Be careful about those periods, because you could, if you leaned in and worked at it, 10x what you're doing. But instead, you're getting the minimum because you're cruising. So Jupiter goes through your house of money once every 12 years, and you're about to have this. So you want to capitalize on this as much as possible. But it does say that to expand, you can't just cruise. You have to go do the work, and then the benefits come. When it comes to relationships, you're doing some good energy because the sun's making a trine to Uranus, and this says that new relationship opportunities can come in. Now, it's interesting because you're in this, in your life, you're feeling like you're behind the scenes, that you're hidden, but people are still noticing you because a lot of these planets are just rising in your chart. They're above the horizon. It's like in the morning, like all of these stars are popping up. And so it's that other people are noticing you and coming towards you and connecting with you. So I like this energy for you. If you're looking for a relationship, this is a time to activate it on a spiritual level first through prayer, meditation, visualization, affirmations, and then go out into the world and see who comes to you. When it comes to home and family, you're pulling energy from that Venus, which is retrograde, and it's not making an aspect to Uranus right now. So things are happening at home that are kind of a repetition of something that's happened before. That could mean that, that kids are, they're all leaving, going back to school, and so you don't see them so much, and so it feels like you got an empty house. Or you're getting into old arguments or falling back into an old routine, and you have a chance to shift this energy now and redo that. So this is the thing to be aware of, is to don't fall back into an old pattern, but see how, as you're heading towards that old pattern, how you can shift directions. Now, when it comes to your money, we've already talked a little bit about that, and that is that you're pulling energy both from that Neptune and Jupiter is now in your house of money. And so it's a very fortunate place, but it's so funny because I talk about this as sometimes being too lucky. And that is, if you are doing investments or things like that, you can feel like you always pick the right stock because you're investing in a bull market, or you invest in something that was going up anyway. And then when Jupiter leaves that house, then suddenly things are not so easy. But the best thing to do here is to look really mindfully at what you're learning about money and how you can learn to handle it better, because Jupiter can really facilitate that by bringing you really helpful people and money to work with to do it. So this is a really great time. I just don't want you to rest on your laurels, especially this early on. So when it comes to investing and money that comes from a business or a family business, I am doing this long speech, which is why this video is so long, about astrology in general. And that is that astrology changes. And it is because things are invented, and then we astrologers have to figure out how that works in the chart. And after a ton of research in 2021, I'm going to start talking differently in 2022 about investments in general. And that is that there are, eighth house is traditional investments. That's what all the books say. It's traditional investments. And then fifth house is gambling. And so, but where's the line, right? And so these days, it's getting more and more popular to take some sort of traditional security like a stock or bond, but trade it in a fashion that is highly risky. That is, that it's highly leveraged, or it's time sensitive, or worse, it's your rent money. So those, if there is a chance of making some money from that, that's not going to be eighth house, that's going to be fifth house. So I want to be as accurate as possible for you, and that is why I'm going to nuance this so that it's clear for you going into 2022 where you want to put your time and energy in, so when things line up for the possibilities of making money. So, and that is that even if we look at something that we have talked about as being risky, and that would be specifically like Bitcoin, that could be traded in a very traditional way that your grandparents could understand. That, like you buy it and you hold it for 20 years. Grandpa would get that. He might know what he may not know what Bitcoin is, but he gets the buy and hold idea. And so the way you're doing it is very eighth house. Now, on the other hand, NFTs, super risky right now. It doesn't matter if you're trying to buy and hold, that thing can still not pay off because it's too new. It's so new. So therefore, and again, this is also, again, this kind of nuance, like NFTs as a category may shift to 8th house at some point, but because they are basically non-fungible, that means that one cannot be exchanged for another, then each one is unique, so therefore they are inherently risky. So let's talk about you. And that is that there's no aspect going on between Mercury and Neptune this time. And so when it comes to investments done in a traditional manner or money from your business or family business, you're not making extra money at this time because you're working on the back office stuff. You're working behind the scenes. Everything's in your 12th house, so it's hidden. And so this is, you're rebuilding the website, you're designing new products, you are talking to customers, but they're not ready to buy. And the same thing is you're still researching the different stocks or bonds that you're going to be buying. When it comes to money derived from career, and this is getting a paycheck, Jupiter is at 0 degrees and in your house of money. So there is something going on here, but there's no aspect going on between Jupiter and Neptune. So there's some sort of possibility. I think it's too new to see what it is. Maybe, your company's been bought and some new department's going to be formed, or your boss is moving up and maybe you're going to fill that boss's position at some point. But I think it's too new to say what that is right now, so it's not necessarily beneficial for you to go and ask for a raise at this time, because they're just going to say, hey, wait, it hasn't happened yet. And so you'll see this happen because Jupiter is going to move fairly quickly. You'll see this line up just outside this 2-week period. And then finally, when we do talk about risky investments, and there are some really risky investments out there, or if we talk about traditional investments that you're doing in a risky way, there's no aspect going on between Mercury and Neptune. So this says to be super careful, because the energy that's out here, the money is not hitting your account. That's a problem. So the energy, I think, could line up in the next couple of cycles, because the North Node's going to leave this house. And see, when the North Node's in the house, you're learning a great deal about it, and you can be quite emotional about it. And then when the North Node shifts out of there, which it will do, and then it won't be back for 18 years, you will then have some more abilities to make money from this source. So, but right now, be really careful. Okay, Pisces, you guys are doing this new moon in your house of friendships, the future, technology, groups and organizations, and community. And this is also where we see the energy of taking responsibility, working harder, or leaning into something. This is all about right now where you are looking at, are you taking responsibility for your future? Are you really leaning into it? And then maybe that sounds like two different things. So, and that is, if you wanted to be a musician, you would practice every day. So, and I put that in past tense, like you can still do that. Like if you want to be a writer, you write every day, even if it's just 50 words. Like that's taking responsibility, that's leaning in. And so, and that's saying, I'm going to do something today for my future in the future. And then the responsibility could be about friendships. And so you might say, I really want friendships in my life. I really want to meet more people. And then you stay home, and or you don't show up to the Zoom meeting for the group because you hate Zoom meetings, that sort of thing. Or worse, you don't really understand the technology, and when there are so many tutorials on it. And so that's where you say, instead of, oh, I just don't know how to do this, so I'm not going to, is the responsibility with this Capricorn new moon is, okay, then I'm going to take responsibility and learn how to do it. And so, and then with groups and organizations, now maybe there's going to be this division of responsibilities of like, what does the group do for you and what are you doing for the group? Or maybe it's quite literal where you are, told that you're now treasurer and you have to show up to every meeting, and you are now taking responsibility for the group's money, or you are doing this even with friends, like where's your responsibility in the friendship, and where's their responsibility? Or are you doing all the calling and setting up of the events and they need to do some of that? So this is where you're going to find some benefits by just asking yourself the questions of where can I be more responsible, or how do I lean in to get better results? Now, where we see your luck is in that Jupiter at 0 degrees of Pisces. So Jupiter is going to be in your sign, in and out for a whole year. You get this once every 12 years, and this brings the luck right to you. This means that when you try something, you have more opportunities of it coming together and working. So you really do want to capitalize on this energy. It also means you're more intuitive, you're more in line with what the universe wants. You can see the path. So now right now the Jupiter's at 0 degrees, so it's a little hard to see. Like you could probably see 20 different paths, but this is going to, like some will fade and some will get brighter, and you'll see this over the next few weeks and months. Now, Jupiter will be in and out of your sign, and we talked about that in the opening, and I gave some dates about that. So be aware that when it pops into the next sign, then it's going into your house of money. So we'll be talking about that. So you have double benefits coming up, because it's either going to be in your first house, which is helping you out, or it's in your house of money, and so bringing you luck there. So you have a really interesting year coming up. Now, when it comes to relationships, and this is like meeting someone new for a love relationship, Mercury's not making an aspect with Neptune, and so there's more of an emphasis on friendships. And so if you're going out and meeting someone new, consider that you're just meeting them. Maybe they'll become a business partner. Maybe they'll just become a friend. Maybe they'll be someone who walks your dog. Instead of thinking, is this the end-all, be-all love relationship? Because that energy is not really lining up at this time. On the other hand, with this much energy in your house of friendships, you could expand your circle of friends and you could meet a lot more people. And then when this energy does line up, it could be that a person who is in your acquaintance pool suddenly steps up and says, I want a relationship. When it comes to home and family, something new is happening because you're pulling energy from that Mercury at 0 degrees. I think that it's so new, it's maybe it takes the whole 2 weeks to figure out what it is. It's kind of like when you plant a mystery seed, you don't know really, like, is it going to be rhubarb or is it going to be carrot? You don't know yet because you didn't identify the seed. So that is, or somebody else planted it. So there's energy shifting here, and it's just a little too new to see. It is also the shift of energy we see because the North Node is going to cross that midheaven IC line. That is a big shift. That happens once every 18 years for you. So something big is shifting. I think this will be quite positive. I don't think you have to be nervous about it, but as something does shift, don't resist it, but say, all right, this is the new adventure. This is the new excitement. So I talked in the intro about when that North Node was shifting. And so you'll see this. Some of this will take place outside the 2-week period, but right now, I think you probably just feel a rumble of energy, like something's coming. And I think this is going to be a good thing. Now, when it comes to your money, you're pulling money from Mars right at the top of your chart. So that is a potential new job, a potential shift in your current employment. Or that you're getting more territory. Something is expanding. It's very noticeable. So there's great opportunities, but it is a semi-sextile to this new moon, and that means that it's a little outside your comfort zone. So this isn't something where you just say, oh yeah, I'm sliding into this new position. It is, I'm sliding into this new position and it's going to be a little bit more work, and I have to deal with, this person over here who's not so easy to get along with. There's going to be something that's like the little rock in your shoe that makes it like not perfect, but it's still a worthwhile thing to consider. So I do see money opportunities, lots of different money opportunities, but all a little bit outside your comfort zone. Okay, when it comes to investments and also money from a family business or your own business, I have a little announcement, and which is why this video is so incredibly long. And that is that in 2022, you're going to hear me talk about investments in a different way. And this is because we normally see traditional investments as being 8th house and risky investments or gambling as 5th house. But nowadays, there's so many different ways to invest. It is quite possible for a person to take a very traditional type of investment, like investing in Amazon by just buying the stock, but doing it in a highly risky manner, which means that you're not going to really see the results from that, from that investment in your 8th house. That's going to come up in your 5th house. And so all this time, I've been talking about traditional investments, thinking people are just buying and selling stocks. But, more and more I'm hearing from clients that, they are buying leveraged ETFs as options. I mean, that is highly risky. At the same time, I have clients who are taking something that we were considering quite risky, which would be Bitcoin, actual Bitcoin, but they're doing it in such a responsible, safe manner, as safe as it can be, because, nothing is a guarantee, but they are doing a dollar cost averaging and planning to hold for 20 or 30 years. So the results that they get are going to come from that 8th house. And so that's a long way to say, you're going to hear me talk about this in a different way in hopes that you're going to find more useful information that you can use. Useful information you can use. So I'm getting a little redundant. So anyway, currently there's no aspect going on between Venus and Mars. And so when it comes to investments done in a traditional manner or your income from a business, you're not seeing the profits so much yet. Right now, this chart is very much based on networking, like getting out into the community and reaching people or making adjustments through technology. And this could mean that you are redoing your social media or your website, or you're looking for ways to automate and make things more streamlined. So you're busy doing that. I think the profits will come in at another time, but right now we're not seeing that for you over the next 2 weeks. Now, when it comes to money derived from career, and this is getting a paycheck from an employer, you have amazing opportunities. Mars is making a sextile to Saturn, plus in that house you have Moon, Sun, Venus, and Pluto. So this is your time over the next 2 weeks to say to your boss, I want a raise. And there is some amazing opportunities that you might not only get a raise, but get a better title, get a better office, or maybe get equipment at home so you can work at home. So this is the time to be looking for a new job if you want it, or asking your boss for more, more opportunities or more money, specifically because the Saturn and Mars do line up. Now, it is a sextile, which does mean you have to ask to activate this energy, but when you do, then beneficial things can happen. And then when we look at risky investments, and even though I'm changing this category a bit, there are still risky investments. There's a difference between Bitcoin and the other 7,000 coins out there. Those 7,000 coins are naturally risky. They do not have as much, capital in them. They don't have as much volume, and they certainly could have at least as much volatility. So those are going to be naturally risky, but also risky investments would include anything that you're doing in a risky fashion, using money you can't afford to lose, highly leveraged investments, or you borrowing money to invest. That's risky. And so what we have here is the moon is making a semi-sextile to Mars. So that is, you can make some profits, but they are outside your comfort zone. So you have to do something a little different, or you have to withstand something that's a little uncomfortable. You have to focus on what you're doing now and see how you can change things up a little bit, or you have to do a little bit more research or talk to somebody, but profits could be made. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe and stay tuned because LaRue wants to say hi.